Come see this thing 1571. Frightening statistics, fielding rejection, feasting on South Korea. This is a series where I summarize rantatonne posts made up of at least 3 things I have read, seen, or heard. First question, is capitalism a statistically superior way to run markets? When I think the general public, when I'm talking to people about capitalism, I'm meaning more free markets and the primacy of private ownership of things, property. Yourself, your actions, your results, the money you earn. When most people think about capitalism, I think they're thinking more of like the original definition that Marx had, which states that it's a system that pursues profit by exploiting labor, and that exploitation does have a negative connotation. Even if you correct for this and you let them know you're talking about free markets and they're talking about exploitation of labor, still other things that are misconstrued towards free markets. For example, capitalism is slavery. How are you going to enslave somebody if there is a primacy in free markets that the person owns themselves as a body and the actions and the results of their actions? Although you can sign up for indentured servitude, but at least you have a choice in the matter. You won't just be drafted into it. Next question. If men can't be the men you want, become them? Andrew Klavan joins Emily Jashinsky on her After Party podcast, and they talk about among other things, they talk about the New York Times article about women just being frustrated with the roles they have to take in society at the current timeline. What could possibly be bringing down these brave and stunning liberated women? I think it may be more acceptable for men to cry in public, but for most women, if you cry because you lost something as non-physically violent as a job application, there's a level of ick that's in their genes. Then you add that they've been indoctrinated into thinking that they need to bury their own inherent feminine sensitivity in order to be more competitive as these girl bosses and take down those caricatured toxic masculinity people that they need to compete with in the fields that they're deciding to enter. Then they end up living as this manned-up avatar of the male that they can never be, but they may think they desire to be with. And then they see the males in their life acting like the woman they have convinced themselves they should never be. So that just multiplies the level of ick. And I think with this, their genes subconsciously signal to them, like, this is who you want to rely on to provide for you when you are generally incapacitated during gestation or focusing on caring for your helpless children. Even if they're not having kids, these are things that are just inherently in our genes. We would not have made it here as a living species unless we had some drive to reproduce, and the societies we created were focused on creating better situations to reproduce. So just now that there's vast swaths of the population that have gotten to a place where they don't really need to follow or listen to their reproductive urge, doesn't mean that still doesn't define and inform how we deal with, especially when we're talking about sexual relationships, even if they're not for reproduction expressly. There's going to be some time until these relationship dynamics are worked out. This hypergamy thing figures out when women are earning this amount of money, that they'll talk about man keeping is causing them to ditch relationships, where they'll be involuntarily single because there's just not enough men, or the sort of men that they would want to be with, to find one that wants to be with them. Last question, is corruption endemic to wealth? Things don't exist for long without a purpose. Women might say they want to drop all the archaic gender roles, then they say, man, he feels like a woman. On that music tip, some of y'all might not know much more about South Korea outside of Gangnam Style, but in this section there's a documentary about how traditional cultural dynamics met state central planning to lead to a few families controlling South Korea.